This program is underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art. Carlos Furniture, a family-owned business, has been providing furniture, appliances, and household accessories since 1997. The flagship store on St. Croix and another on St. Thomas are both open for in-store shopping and are able to ship to various locations in the Caribbean.
and viewers like you. The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Welcome to the Bookcase. I'm your host, Shawna Richards, a sometime writer and a longtime reader. I invite you to join me as we explore the bookcase and celebrate Virgin Islands authors and talent. Each week on the Bookcase, we'll introduce you to a local author and learn more about them and their work. A storyteller lives in each of us, and I'm so excited to give our homegrown storytellers a chance to tell their story. Tonight's selection from the Bookcase is 10 Steps to Kill a King, and I'm honored to welcome its author, Ajeeb Prince. Ajeeb, welcome to the Bookcase. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I'd like for you to take a few seconds and introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, I am Ajeeb Prince. I am an author, 31 years old, living on St. Croix, Virgin Islands, and I have so much more stories to tell.
Well, that is exciting to hear. So tonight we are actually here to talk about your book, 10 Steps to Kill a King, which is a crime mystery. What inspired you to write this book?
Story time. So for a while, I was kind of doing a little survey, kind of a little project, and I was asking a lot of people, what kind of genres do they really like to read? And believe it or not, a lot of people were telling me they liked how-to step books, 10 steps to do this kind of books, and I was like, I can do that, I can work with that. So I thought of something that would be a little shocking as a title, came up with 10 Steps to Killing a King. And for a while I was like, I like fantasy. Should I make it where it's like an immortal king or something like that, where it's like you have to do some kind of magic thing, you know? But I kind of tried to make it more grounded, and I decided to make it more of a crime thriller kind of story. So. And
it is definitely a thriller. In this book, you take us into the underworld.
Yes, literally, actually.
Literally. Into the underworld, but we are introduced to so many diverse characters, and in reading it, there was so much nuance. And as I was turning the chapters, and you really should have written a longer book, by the way.
Okay.
But in turning the chapters, you think, okay, I've got it figured out. And then you flip a page and say, Was it hard, to build out the story?
Yes and no. When I write a story, I like to create the world itself and then plot my characters in there and say, all right, survive. I don't know how you're gonna do it. We'll figure it out though, because you're gonna survive. It's okay, because you're the main character, bro. I mean, come on. Maybe, you might die, I don't know. But I try to come up with something that is different, that no one's ever really seen, but in a way that people are familiar with. Example, we were talking about Harry Potter earlier, and what makes Harry Potter interesting to me, I can't speak for everybody else, but interesting to me is, yes, there's magic, there's dragons, there's three-headed dogs, there's Quidditch and stuff like that, but a lot of the characters are very, very human, they're very real, what their intentions are, what their motivations are, why they do what they do, being muggles or muggle-born and what that experience is like, which is semi-racism, I guess we would call it. So it kind of gives you a real perspective of, yes, these people are wizards, but they do live in the real world. And I still like those kind of grounded stories because that's what life is really like, and it just definitely teaches us interesting lessons, even though we're in a world that doesn't technically exist. So it's interesting to be put in that scenario and be able to read that and see what they do with it.
But as someone born and raised on St. Croix, and you create this story of essentially an underworld, are there elements of St. Croix that you pulled from in writing your story?
Not really,
Okay.
honestly. I'm gonna be real with you. I kind of strayed away from the Virgin Islands. My first book was set in the Virgin Islands, and there wasn't no reason like I don't want to be a Virgin Islands writer. It wasn't that. I just want to kind of create a place where I'd never been before, and I have different stories that are set on islands and mystical stories. You know, islands that literally are floating in the air. You know what I mean? So I kind of was like, let me try something in a city. Let's try in a city, someplace like New York, but not New York. Let's change it. Let's make it my New York, and that's what I did. Kind of like a little Gotham, a little bit of Gotham City, a little bit of GTA, a little bit of New York. I was technically born in Philadelphia, so a little bit of Philadelphia. So I kind of just took a little different kind of perspectives, except for just the one that I was raised into.
What is your hardest challenge in world building?
That's a good question. It depends on what the world building is. It depends on what the genre is. If it's fantasy or anything like that, it might be probably religious beliefs, language, location, how does the world interact, the timelines that kind of got us where we, the timelines where we are today, where the story is being set. Those things kind of will take me a while to make sure I have it concrete. And because I am telling a story in this area, sometimes certain things that happened before might change because of where I am right now. Like, oh, okay, let me go back and change this so this can make sense. So it doesn't seem like it's out of nowhere. To make it feel very rounded and full. And for someone to feel like if they lived in that world, that it could actually be something that they can actually feel like they lived there, like it really feels lived in, you know? That's the hardest part sometimes. Really
because
that.
I think as a reader, and in reading 10 steps, I believed in that world. And there wasn't anything that pulled me out of it, which I think sometimes in reading fantasy and in that genre, you have to be really immersed in it. And your characters have to be immersed in it, because it can just be something really simple that pulls you out, and then your story isn't believable. Was that something that you were really conscious of as you were writing?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to make sure that if you're reading one of my stories, that you forget who you are, that you become that character. And that's why I want to make sure these characters feel real, they feel human. So you can really feel like you can live in their skin. And there's certain things that you might be like, oh, I understand this. This is kind of rubbing me the wrong way because this is what they're going through, and I don't feel good knowing that I'm reading a story and this person is going through what I'm going through. I don't like this. But it's a good thing to be able to know that when someone reads something that I wrote, they do feel like they're actually in that world, and there's not anything that's going to take them out of it, unless they put the book down because someone called them or something. Unfortunately, that happens. But that's really the best thing about writing fantasy, and just to kind of find a way to get people involved and geared and have them keep turn the page and figure out what's going to happen next, and learning more about the world that they're living in, and learning more about this creature and that creature, and how does this work? How does the magic work? How does these skills be able to develop over time? Those are some of the craziest things I love to really write, because that's how I feel like I'm getting involved in the characters themselves. Because yeah, I wrote them, I created it, but there's certain things I still want to learn about them myself. They're going to teach me something too. I'm like a little gardener, so.
When you were growing up, what were you seeing people like yourself in the books that you were reading? So you referenced Harry Potter, but what other books were you reading that really helped to, inform and develop your love of fantasy and fantasy writing?
Chronicles of Narnia, because of the 4 children being into a whole different other world. And I'm gonna be real with you, there are a lot of times, especially growing up, where I felt like I was different from a lot of people around me, Caribbean people, Crucians, maybe because of how I talk, I don't really use the Crucian accent that often. So there was kind of a disconnect, and I really loved a series of unfortunate events. It's not really too much of fantasy. Yes, there are fantasy elements, but what the characters go through, these kids, and they're trying to be the best kids they can be and be the nicest kids ever, but everybody's just so terrible.
Yeah.
Oh my God, everybody is so terrible in those books. So terrible. And even the kids, they have their issues, you know. One is very talkative and knows a lot of things about books and different things like that, but at the same time can be very reserved at certain times. And the girl, she's a little more, takes more of a demand, more of a front seat when it comes to decisions they make because she's good with her hands. You know what I mean? But she can be a little pretentious at times. And then the baby is a baby. She don't know
Right.
that. You know what I mean? So those kind of stories like that, I can give you all different kind of stories that I've read. I can't really think of all the different names now. I even read Insurgents, that book series, and just to see what Trish goes to, because she was raised in a world where she's not going out doing all these crazy wild things that they do in this new faction. She's used to being very reserved and, you know, thinking of others and doing everything for everybody else before her.
And a lot of those
opposite,
books
you
are
know?
really categorized as young adults,
Yeah, absolutely.
but really the stories are universal.
Absolutely. And a
Yeah.
lot of those stories I would still read now as an adult and still feel it. Still feel it.
So have you gone back to revisit any of those books now as an older reader?
Yes.
And
yes, I have.
has there been anything that jumped out at you and said, wow, I wasn't getting this when I was a...
Yeah, a lot of things. A lot of things. It's like watching cartoons as an adult and I'm like, I didn't realize that as
Yeah.
a kid. I didn't realize Courage the Cowardly Dog. I didn't realize how crazy that show was as a kid. But when you watch it now, you know, so it's the same thing like reading those books. It's like, wow, this is really kind of dark. Not dark
Yeah.
in being just bad, but dark being like, wow, this is very mysterious. I don't know what's going on here. Like, and now that I'm kind of learning what it really means now because I'm an adult, I'm like, dang, I read this as a kid and I loved it.
Yeah.
You know? And I still do. It's just.
But now you have the
but
benefit
yeah.
of life experience.
Yeah, to really understand. You
understand.
know, what these characters are really saying, especially adult characters. Like you're not gonna know until you get to adult. Yeah. You know, you're telling these characters in a story they're not gonna understand, and I'm sitting there like, whatever, bro. Now I'm an adult, like, Snape, you was right, bro. You were so right. You and Dumbledore and everybody else.
When did you
Man.
first start writing?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know. I think I started writing when I was just a kid doing poetry.
Okay.
Honestly, just doing poems for fun, writing little short stories for fun. Did not really know what I was doing. For a long time, I thought I was going to be a musician or something. For a long time, I thought I was going to be not a rapper, but a producer, and also do like sound effects for movies. That's one thing I went to school for that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Still do it sometimes. Still do a little YouTube, so it's always fun. But writing, I cannot tell you when I started. I can tell you when I wrote my first book-long story was when I was 14, 15.
Was it an assignment for school or just something that you were
No.
motivated to do on your own?
I just did it for fun. It was just a fun experiment that I did. It was just kind of like a slice of life, going from junior high to high school, what that was like, new people, new friends, falling in love, different things like that. Certain experiences that I had in my life in high school, I did put in the story, different names, different people. But yeah, that was like the first time I really sat down every night, and I took like 30 minutes to an hour and just sat there and wrote. And it was written terribly. There was so much misspelling. There was so many things
So
misspelled.
your first story, were you starting to delve into fantasy and mysticism and all of those elements yet?
No, no, not yet, not yet. It was just set in what I saw and what I understood. I didn't really get into fantasy, even though I loved fantasy and read it. I didn't really get into it as a writer yet until I got more into college.
Okay.
When I started doing that.
And what triggered that jump for you creatively to say, I think I'm ready now to tackle this genre that I love so much?
Well, to just tackle writing as actually something I would love to do, it was Game of Thrones, the TV show. And it wasn't because I watched this, oh my God, it's a good show, because everybody loved it. That's not what it was. It was because I realized, oh my God, this is a book. And I was like, I have to read this.
It's true. That was actually, the TV show was my introduction to
Right.
the book. So I went back and I read I read the series, which is so far beyond.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely my favorite book series. And it's Game of Thrones is a great TV show. It's not my baby. It could have literally ended perfectly. It would still not be my favorite. But the books are definitely my favorite when it comes to the book series. And I read them over and over as much as I can.
And I think just reading Game of Thrones, reading that series, it's really a masterclass that you could have a fully populated world and have characters that are rich and nuanced. I did not feel in that entire series that there was any character who was a throwaway.
Right.
And in your book, in 10 steps, you have a fully populated world, and your characters are whole people. And I thought that was, when in reading it and you're introducing new people, and of course the challenge for me as a reader was basing my perceptions on them, because I was like, oh, that's a really bad person. But then somebody else would come along and like, ooh, that's a really bad person. So great job.
Can I ask you one question? When you read the story, did you feel, and I'm not going to spill because you know what happens, but at the end, did you ever think that out of all the things that I created made you feel, oh, this is a bad person, oh, this is even worse, oh, this is a worse person, did you ever feel like Vivian was the worst of all?
No.
Good.
I did not.
Okay. Even with what she did at the end, knowing it's a revenge story, even what she did at the end, you don't think that she's a bad person?
No.
Okay.
No, because she had her motivations, and every character is working through their own sense of justice.
Right.
And in the world that they live in, it made sense. Now, if you were to pull them out and put them in a different environment, a different world, a different story, would it make sense? But in that world that you created, yeah.
Okay.
But as they say, revenge is a dish best served cold.
Yes. Very cold.
How did you develop Vivian as a character? Was she based on strong women in your life?
No.
No?
Not really. I don't know. I don't think so.
So
No.
how did Vivian present herself to you?
When I created Vivian, I didn't think about I want her to be a strong woman or anything like that. I didn't think about a trope. I wanted her to be the kind of woman who was wounded, who was angry, who was sad, but wasn't afraid.
But not the trope of an angry black woman.
No.
Okay.
Not the trope of angry black woman. I want her to be angry when it comes to what she's experienced and knowing that everybody else is kind of not really upset like she is. Because through most of the story, she's very pleasant. She's very sweet. I love Vivian. You know what I mean? But she knows why she's there. Yeah, she knows why she's there. So it's not that she's going to be pleasant because that's just natural. Yeah, it is. But at the same time, she knows she's also trying to make sure no one around her knows what her and her associates are doing as they're at the gala. You know what I mean? So she knows how to play the game. But I didn't create it to be a trope where, she's so strong and everything like that. No, because, and I'll actually read from the excerpt here if you don't mind.
Please do.
Are you sure about this? Percy asks. You know how personal matters are. And that's why I planned this with Vivian, Malcolm told him. If it were up to her, we'd just leave some bombs all around the building and just be done with it. But we're playing a different game. And the reason why I have that line there is not because, Malcolm's coming in to be the guy that's gonna baby,
Save
let's do this and save the world. No, he has his own thing going. What he's doing is making sure that she doesn't go overboard, because he knows that she's upset right now. She's angry that no one really feels what she feels. She has no brother around. Everybody else is basically outside the family. Her
And
branch
that's what I
is just
pulled
her.
from that.
Yeah.
Who feels it knows it.
Exactly.
And she knows what she's going through, and Malcolm has been journeyed to what she's going through.
Right. He's been there with her.
He's been there with her.
Exactly. So he's willing to take a back seat when it comes to, this is what I want to do. I said, oh, cool. I'm there with you. I love you. I'm there with you. But we're not gonna go in there and just do this and destroy everything that you, your father, everybody else has built. We're gonna do it right. We're gonna do it right. Okay, so how are we doing this? Da-da-da-da. Well, I can't do this like that. Okay, well, how would you do this? Da-da-da-da. Okay, cool. So we're a team here. We're doing this together. You know what I mean? But at the same time, Vivian is the one who is the catalyst for this, because she's the one, she's the key. She's the one who is grieving here. You know what I mean? And Malcolm is just the one that's going to support her. So, like I said, I didn't think about it like, well, she's a strong this, a strong. No, she is. She is. But I just wanted her to be realistic when it comes to the world she's in and what she's experiencing right now. And that's why Vivian became who she was and was created to be who she was.
So in your story, in 10 Steps, there is a steady march towards the end.
Yes.
Every chapter is building on this movement.
Every chapter's a step, yeah.
Every chapter is a step. And in writing it, what was your process? Did you plot out every chapter? Did you knew the end goal when you started writing it? You
Yes
knew that
and
this
no.
was how it would end.
Yes and no. I plotted out every step, but I didn't plot out where the story is going to go throughout the steps. I knew that these were the 10 steps I wanted to climb to get to the end, the fallout. So I knew where the characters were at this time. I knew what they were doing. I knew the reason they were here. Before I decided to do steps or anything like that, I knew why they were here. When I created the steps, I was like, okay, well, we need this, we need these things. Certain things we need. If I'm gonna do it this way, we need certain things. But as the characters maneuvered to these steps, that was something that just kind of happened as I write the story. You know, that was the gardening part. The architect part was just me actually having the actual steps set up. But it was strange to say it that way. Like, how do you have certain things, like a certain thing set this way, and then have your character just maneuver your way through it? It works, trust me. It works. It works.
But you had, but the trigger to this story happened before the story started.
Yes. Certain things I already knew was going to happen, but
And so we're coming in and we're finding these characters who have their motivation.
yes, they already have their motivations. They already know what they're doing.
And everyone has a different motivation.
Yes.
Yes. So you've got some really a lot of themes in there. You have romance, revenge, crime,
Yes.
mystery. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it, yeah.
Okay.
Deception, you know.
So a real crime story.
Yeah. And honestly, when it comes to the romance, I think that Joy and Percy's romance is more of the reason they're doing what they're doing than Vivian and Malcolm. Vivian and Malcolm are already established. They already are in love. They already have what they're doing. They're already ready to be engaged and everything. Joy and Percy is at a point where them being together is dangerous, you know. So they're there because of them, for each other. You know what I mean? Yes, Joy is Vivian's friend. Yes, Percy works for Malcolm. But overall, their love is what really motivates them even more than Vivian and Malcolm.
And even though we are in this world where there are a lot of very dark and mysterious things going on, there's still humor and still laughter. And did you try really hard? Was that hard for you to insert that in there, or were your characters just living their lives?
I created a few characters that's not like the comic relief, but I let them be a little more, there's always gonna be a few characters in a crime story where everything to them is a joke. Like, he's dead, okay, that's funny. You know, different things like that. There's gonna be guys like that. So that's what made it easy for me to write jokes. I'm not really a comedy writer, honestly. I tried to do comedy in YouTube, but that's a challenge as well. So yeah, it was kind of a challenge, but I did create certain characters, so when I do those jokes, it wasn't out of place. It was geared to the right people, so it can, you know, feel at least genuine.
Do you see yourself writing in other genres? So this is a crime and mystery. Do you see yourself writing in any other forms?
I'm writing one right now that's speculative history. I am writing a story about not low fantasy, high fantasy, but a story where it's geared towards slavery, where these people find a slave and they're trying to keep him hidden. So that's more of a suspense, a little bit of thriller, but more of a suspense. I love world building, so I have a few stories that is just world building where there's no main characters. The main characters is a country or a kingdom or a family. I have one story where for 1,000 years, no one died. And then after 1,000 years, the first woman to ever give birth, who is like just turned 1,000, she dies. So now everybody can die. Death has been introduced. You know what I mean? So that story is not, there's no main characters, it's just the world itself. It's more of a speculative history, or speculative evolution is what the term is. But because I'm not taking humans to a different planet and terraforming planets and creating different species, I don't consider it speculative evolution, I just consider it speculative history.
So in getting all your books from your head onto the page and out to the public, are you working with a publisher or are you self-publishing?
I was working with a publisher. Unfortunately, my publisher said that we don't do fiction anymore, Mr. Prince. And I said, oh, dang it. I wasn't ready to publish it even then. So even if he said, we'll publish this one for you, but just after that, nothing, I wasn't ready, you know. So I will be doing self-publishing. There is a woman that calls me from the States about publishing as well, but I'm not ready the manuscript's not ready yet. I am ready to publish again, but I want to make sure my manuscripts are prepared.
So are you going to be focusing on still novellas? Are you going to be doing short stories? Are you aiming for a novel? What does your future work look like?
One novella next year, the speculative history, and one novel as well next year. I'm hoping to have 2 published next year. I would like to do a book of short story, which I've already started. I have so many different projects I'm working on once.
Are you a full-time writer?
Not professionally. I do have my regular 9 to 5. I work at Virgin Islands Partners in Recovery. So that's what I do there. But I do write every day. And
that was my question. How do you balance the demands of your day job with being creative?
Just to find the time. It's really just finding time. I like to either measure by a certain amount of time or a certain amount of words. I would say between 500 to 1,000 words a day, which can probably be 3 or 4 pages, depending. Or I just say I just want to make sure I have 30 minutes to an hour today to put some work in. And then the same thing with my YouTube channel. I have to find 30 minutes to an hour every day, if not more every day.
So do you write best in the morning, at night? What's your process like?
Not a time, it's more of a feeling. Not a time. I can write.
So you wait for inspiration?
First thing in the morning. No, I can write literally first thing in the morning. I can really get up in the morning and just write because I'm feeling it. And I would try and be like, nah, this is not working right now, I'll try later. And later on will be better. Sometimes the whole day would not be a writing day and I just won't do it. You know, I don't want to force anything because then if I already wrote it down, it's going to be months maybe until I come back and look at it to edit it and be like, I wasn't fully ready when I wasn't fully in the spirit when I wrote this. I need to change that. Now I just wasted my time.
So real quickly, what's your tip for any aspiring writer out there?
What's the tip? I'll give you the cliche one and I'll give you the non-cliche one. The first cliche one is just to do it. Have an idea, to do it. Take the time, don't overthink it. First, you need to put the words on the page. And once you start doing that and get comfortable doing that, then decide, do a little short story or poetry. Just start building from there.
Great.
Build from there.
It's been a pleasure to learn more about our local talent, Ajeeb Prince, and his book, 10 Steps to Kill a Prince. For more information on this book or any of the books featured on this program, visit our website at www.wtjx.org. We appreciate your support of our local authors, and we'll see you next week when we take another book from the Bookcase.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters. This program was underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art
and viewers like you.